The last day of death row. Inmate. George Rivas. Chilling final words before execution. Everyone, on February 29th, 2012, a day that only appears on calendars every 4 years, George Rivas faced his final reckoning. Notorious as the mastermind behind the Texas 7 prison escape, Rivas wasn't just an inmate on death row. He was a calculated strategist, the architect of one of the most brazen breakouts in modern history. His escape led to the tragic death of Officer Aubrey Hawkins, a moment that haunted Texas for over a decade. But as the clock wound down on this rare leap day, Rivas's demeanor wasn't defiant or desperate. It was strangely peaceful. No more legal lifelines, no last-minute motions, just a man confronting the silence of his final day. In his last hours, surrounded by concrete walls and ghosted by the families his actions devastated, George Rivas prepared to speak his final words and take his last breath. What does justice look like when the mastermind finally runs out of moves? Let's find out. Dear friends, as the sun rose over Livingston, Texas on February 29th, 2012, George Rivas, a man once described as intelligent, methodical, and cold, awoke to face his final hours. It was Leap Day, a date that comes only once every 4 years. But for Rivas, there would be no next time. The legal system had spoken. Every door had closed. Clemency was denied. The appeals were exhausted. This was the end. Rivas, once a high-achieving student with a promising future, had long since abandoned the rules of ordinary life. His crimes were not impulsive, they were calculated. Rivas had built a reputation behind bars, not just as an inmate, but as a leader. He handpicked 6 other men, each with a role to play, and orchestrated a detailed plan that would turn into one of the most infamous prison breaks in Texas history. The Texas 7 were born. In December of 2000, their plan unfolded like clockwork. Civilians at the Connolly unit were overpowered. Prison guards were tied up. Uniforms were stolen. Tools were taken. And when they drove out of the prison gates in a stolen maintenance truck, no one knew they were gone until it was too late. Rivas didn't just escape. He led a tactical mission. And for a brief moment, they were free. But that freedom would come at a cost. On Christmas Eve, just weeks after the escape, the Texas 7 found themselves in Irving, Texas, attempting to rob a sporting goods store for weapons and cash. As they were leaving, Officer Aubrey Hawkins responded to a silent alarm. He never stood a chance. The ambush was swift and brutal. He was shot multiple times. 11 bullets tore through his body. A 9-year-old boy lost his father that night. And though George Rivas didn't fire the fatal shots, prosecutors said he was the mastermind behind the escape and the chaos it unleashed. The man who once assigned roles and studied guard schedules was now being called something else, a killer by design. 41 days after the breakout, the manhunt ended. One member of the group took his own life. The others, including Rivas, were captured. And for his role in the deadly escape, Rivas was sentenced to death. The sentence would not come quickly. For over a decade, his lawyers filed appeals, challenging the process, the fairness, and even the method of execution itself. But none of it mattered anymore. As dawn broke on February 29th, the prison fell into its routine. Rivas remained calm. He had spent the night under routine Deathwatch protocols. There were no outbursts, no disruptions. His legal team had pushed until the very end, but as his attorney Mick Mickelson admitted, there were no more moves left to play. Inside the Palunsky unit, Rivas began the day with final goodbyes. Through thick glass, he spoke with close friends and members of his legal team. No physical contact was allowed, but the words mattered. The hours mattered. And Rivas seemed aware that this was the last time he would hear their voices. By midday, it was time to move. Guards escorted him out of his cell. Shackled, he was placed into a white prison van. The 40-mile drive from Livingston to Huntsville was solemn, lined with Texas highway that had seen countless others take this same final route. Rivas said nothing. At the Walls unit, the infamous Huntsville prison, he was processed, fingerprinted, and changed into a fresh white uniform. This was standard procedure, but there was nothing ordinary about the day. There was no last meal. Texas had banned customized requests years earlier after a string of controversies. So at 4:30 in the afternoon, Rivas was served what every other inmate received that evening: barbecue chicken with sides. He ate quietly, finishing most of it. There were no complaints. Outside the prison walls, a crowd gathered. Dozens of police officers from Irving had made the journey. They stood silently, some in uniform, others in plain clothes, waiting to witness the justice they had fought for over a decade. Among them were those who had worked with Officer Hawkins, those who had attended his funeral, those who had seen a badge go dark. Back inside, Rivas made phone calls. He reached out to family and friends. One call was particularly symbolic. He spoke with Sherry McDonald, a Canadian woman he had married by proxy while on death row. The marriage wasn't official until recently, but in those final hours, he offered her gentle words of affection and peace. As the clock neared 6 in the evening, the final green light was given. No stay had come from the Supreme Court, no governor's reprieve. It was happening. The witnesses, family of the victim, state officials, members of the press, and Rivas's own supporters were escorted into viewing rooms, two sides. One divided by bulletproof glass, the other divided by the weight of what was about to unfold. The curtain in the execution chamber was drawn back. Rivas was already lying on the gurney, his arms strapped down. A chaplain stood at his side, a Bible in one hand, the other resting gently on Rivas's leg. The microphone above him hummed to life. When asked if he had any final words, Rivas spoke clearly and with purpose. He addressed Officer Hawkins' family first. "I am truly sorry for all that happened, not just because of where I am now, but because I know you deserve peace in your hearts." He then turned to his wife, his sister, his son, and his friends, expressing his love, his gratitude, and his goodbye. To the guys on the row, he said, "You have my respect and appreciation." Then came the final line. "I'm ready to go." The injection began. Rivas's eyes stayed fixed on his wife through the glass. He mouthed, "I love you," again and again, slower each time, until his eyelids finally closed. The drugs took effect quickly. His breathing slowed, his chest rose and fell unevenly, and a faint sound escaped his lips. 10 minutes later, at 22 minutes past 6 in the evening, George Rivas was declared dead. No last-minute miracle, no redemption arc, just the end of a man whose choices had left lives shattered in their wake. Rivas was the second member of the Texas Seven to be executed. Others would follow. The system, slow as it may be, had made its judgment. But beyond the gurney and beyond the final breath, a deeper question lingers. Can someone who masterminded such pain ever truly show remorse? And does remorse matter when the lives lost can never be returned? For those left behind, families, friends, officers, and victims, the echoes of George Rivas's actions will never fully fade. But at least on that leap day in 2012, the clock stopped ticking for the man who once tried to outrun it. In the final moments of George Rivas's life, what stood out most wasn't the escape he masterminded, or even the lives lost because of it. It was the calm, measured way he faced the end. There were no desperate pleas, no angry outbursts, just a man who had long accepted the weight of his choices and the reality of what they had cost. His final words weren't for himself, but for the people left behind, the family of Officer Aubrey Hawkins, his own wife, and the inmates he had lived among for over a decade. But questions linger beyond his execution. Does intellect excuse nothing? Can years of regret balance a few moments of destruction? The story of George Rivas is not just about a crime. It's about the consequences of calculated choices and the enduring pain of those left behind. Justice may have been served, but for many, closure remains just out of reach.